both the House and Senate tomorrow, providing this resolution authorizing the use of force. But there is a question of prerogative, of what is the authority of Congress, what is the authority of the White House. One person involved in these negotiations told me this is not a Democrat versus Republican issue, but this is really a question of the authority between the executive branch of government and the legislative branch. Of course, it is Congress that has the power to declare war. They don't want to cede that power over to the White House. Meanwhile, a couple other things to bring you up to speed on up here on Capitol Hill, Judy. One is that the top members of Congress, the leadership, including the Speaker of the House, the ranking Democrats, and also the Senate leader, Tom Daschle and Trent Lott, have gone to the Pentagon to review the damage firsthand at the Pentagon and to get a briefing on the situation there. And, of course, also Congress working, speeding ahead towards a bill that would give money to aid in these relief efforts. Right now, that number at $20 billion. They're hoping to finalize that. But the $20 billion figure, we are told by people on both sides up here, and you've heard it from the Pentagon, is simply a down payment. They believe that's just a first step, that the actual costs of going through this repair, of rebuilding, of working on steps to ensure this doesn't happen again will be much more than $20 billion. But Congress is working very quickly on that. That may be voted on tonight or tomorrow.
And John, just to be clear, that $20 billion would not include any beefing up of security, any stepping up of our military to take whatever steps the president and military leadership decide to take.
Yeah, that $20 billion is really a question of getting this mess cleaned up, of getting the aid to New York, of getting the money needed to rebuild the Pentagon. But of course, you get to the other questions of security, of beefing up military force. That's a whole nother question. And again, that's why the Pentagon and members up here are saying the $20 billion figure is just the tip of the iceberg. This could end up costing much, much more.
And John, we heard at the White House when one of the reporters, or several of them, asked White House spokesman Ari Fleischer about concern that this additional money might cause the budget, in the budget fight that we've seen, the spending to dip into the so-called Social Security, Medicare trust funds. Ari Fleischer, unflinching in his answer, he said national security is going to come first.
Oh, absolutely, and that is, you would not find Democrats up here, any of the Democratic leaders at least, that would disagree with that. This is, again, either a national emergency or maybe even an act of war that we're looking at here, a time of war. Members of Congress, that whole debate that seemed so big, Judy, just a few days ago about whether or not we dip into the Social Security surplus, that debate pretty much gone. It's been overwhelmed by events.
And Jonathan, again, just to stress that you're not seeing partisan divides over this. I mean, is there any sort of outline, though, Jonathan, to the disagreement you're seeing over the language in that declaration on the use of force?
Well, we have some sound, I think, that we can play so you can hear directly from congressional leaders what they're saying about this. The first one I want to play for you, if we do have it on ready, is from Congressman Dick Gephardt, the top Democrat in the House of Representatives. Here's what he said specifically about that legislation.
That the president has powers in present law to deal with what's in front of us. If the president wants and seeks additional authority or a restatement of present authority that's appropriate, we are quite willing to do that. We want to give him the tools that he needs and his administration needs to deal with this problem.
So there you have from the top Democrat in the House of Representatives saying that he will do whatever necessary to give the president the authority to respond to these acts. But there are concerns, and just shortly after Dick Gephardt came out and said that, we heard in a joint press conference between Trent Lott and Tom Daschle, by the way, a press conference that followed an extraordinary lunch. All 100 members of the United States Senate sat down for lunch together today to talk about these issues, to talk about the money issue and about this resolution authorizing the use of force. The leaders came to the cameras after that and were asked, well, what about concerns that this would give too much authority, a blank check to the president to use military action wherever he sees fit? And Trent Lott said that there were some concerns among members about the division of authority between the White House and the legislative branch of government. And then Tom Daschle had this to say.
The resolution following the Pearl Harbor invasion was a very clear statement of intent with regard to the president's authority and with regard to Congress's intentions. That is exactly our hope, to provide a clear statement of authority.
And actually, Tom Daschle went on to remind everybody that Congress is a co-equal branch of government, and there was concern among members, bipartisan concern, of not ceding that authority, all that authority regarding making war, to the White House. But as you can see, that really this is not a question of partisan disagreements up here, at least not right now, Judy.
All right, Jonathan Karl, the Capitol, and I would just quickly reiterate a moment ago at the White House, Ari Fleischer saying out of 125 military actions undertaken by the United States, he said only 5 of them involve formal declarations of war. Aaron, back to you in New York.
Judy, thank you. We need to sort something out here. We have told you for the last many hours about this dramatic rescue of 5 firefighters who were found in an SUV. They were largely in good shape, we were told. And then a short time ago, we saw some pictures at St. Vincent Hospital in Lower Manhattan of firefighters, obviously, who had been injured and who were being brought to the hospital, and our people on the ground put 2 and 2 together. And in this case, it didn't quite add up. Brian Palmer's down at the scene, and he can unsort this for us. Brian, I gather the guys we saw being brought in were not the 5, correct?
Exactly, Aaron. I just wanted to straighten out exactly who we saw. We've seen a bit of video before. There are actually, that was not the 5 firefighters rescued in the SUV. I repeat, not the 5 firefighters rescued from the SUV buried in rubble after spending 2 days in that vehicle. What we saw was basically a mix of 2 things: regular 911 calls here at St. Vincent's, and also other rescue workers, fire department officials, Port Authority, police, and construction workers who were injured today on site. Aaron?
Brian, thank you. We saw a report a little bit ago, actually, on that people have been getting fragments in their eyes, fiberglass in their eyes and the like. It's dangerous work down there, and people are getting hurt, and that's what we saw. And we straighten it out as soon as we figure it out. Our new colleague and old friend Lou Dobbs joins us. You've been dealing with the financial markets today. They're going to open on Monday, a little later than they hoped. Is the technology in place to open?
The technology is in place right now, Aaron, to open. The fact is that the physical destruction down there is such, and the building's still in such bad shape, the needs for power and telecommunications, they're still not at 100% certain. They're giving themselves, principally Con Edison and Verizon, the telecom that is providing all of the data and voice communication down there, giving themselves an extra 3 days to get it right.
And are they going to use this? I gather they're going to use this time to test out systems and make sure they work.
Absolutely. I mean, you've been reporting on this now for 3 days. The devastation is remarkable. The fact that they could bring these markets back this quickly is nothing less than a superhuman achievement. Dick Grasso, the chairman of the New York Exchange, wanted to bring it back today. I talked with a number of members of the board of the New York Stock Exchange, the people who run the firms. They want desperately to bring this market back. And to put this in some context, the fact that this market has been down, $45 billion a day are traded on the big board. That market alone represents $13 trillion in market capitalization. That is more than London and Tokyo and Frankfurt combined. This is the world's financial center, and it's imperative to bring it back as quickly but as prudently as possible.
Help me with this stuff.
Sure.
The symbolism of the market I get. And I really understand here that symbolically it's enormously important to say that this center of American capitalism, Wall Street, is functioning. We are, as a nation, okay. As a practical economic matter, how much does it matter?
A great deal. It is, much has been talked about symbolically here, but the fact is that that corridor down there, much of it below 14th Street and much of it has been devastated over the past few days, represents the fuel that keeps a democratic capitalistic society moving. And it touches you through your 401k, all of your investments, those for your children, and for tens and tens of millions of other Americans. In fact, it reaches around the world.
I said, I guess an hour, maybe a little less ago, and I'm perfectly be prepared to get slapped around by you right now for having said it, but that I suspect that not since October of '87 will an opening be watched as closely as this one. We're not in the prediction business, but I guess that it's going to be a nervous at about 9:29 on Monday morning.
Well, as you say, we're not in the prediction business. That doesn't keep any of us from venturing to that area. But the fact is, this is the first time since the Great Depression that we have seen the market close for more than 3 days. It will be watched anxiously, nervously by everyone. But the fact is that the people I'm talking with who run the firms and who run the exchange, they are prepared for an orderly market. We saw it today with the bond market open. We saw a bit of a move up in prices on the bond market. That's because it's a safe haven in times like these. The people who are writing into us are talking about going out and buying cars and not selling a stock for a year. There's a great will in this country. That will is represented politically, economically, and financially in markets like these. So I'm one of those. I'll make a prediction that we're going to see a far more orderly market than anyone imagines.
Is it when the market was shut down early that day a couple of years ago? I forget how many years ago now. There was a real concern that it was really a bad thing, that it kind of pent up both emotions and that the market needs a kind of constant flow to operate in an efficient and orderly way. Right. In this case, do you think there might be a salutary effect to the fact the market's been closed, that we've seen world markets trade, we have a sense of what's going on there, people have a much better sense of what's going on in their own country? Am I wishful thinking here?
No, I think you're making a very good, a very exact point, and demonstrably. We saw the sell-off in Tokyo overnight following the destruction of the World Trade Centers, and we saw the markets come back. We saw the dollar sell off in the day following, and we saw it come back. I think that, as you say, the fact that the market is closed is, first of all, necessary and deeply regrettable, but I think it's also a great thing that we're not going to see the market open tomorrow, in which the market could have been open briefly in 2 days. Next week we'll have a full week for the market to assert itself and to do what it does best, make sense of it all.
Thank you. I know you're back in a little bit to talk more about these things. Thank you.
Good talking with you.
A long time since we've done this. Thank you. Down on, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. You know, you sit here for a while and you forget sometimes what you said and what you haven't. The mayor is hopeful. Mayor Giuliani is hopeful that the city will be able to open up below 14th Street. 14th Street is the line where it's been cut off. Basically, it's virtually impossible to get through there, and the mayor hopes by midnight tonight that will change. Martin Savage down on the ground, not far from there, I suspect, to update us on the situation there. Marty?
Well, the situation continues to be somewhat confused as these buildings that we have talked about. The One Liberty Plaza building is one that we are told right now is very much at least questionable. In fact, we're hearing that there has been some partial evacuations in that area because of instability reasons. There was a time earlier today they were saying, at least according to people who had claimed they'd gone in and looked at that building, it was structurally sound. Something has happened in the meantime where someone was incorrect, because now they are concerned about that building. There is another one as well that they are worried about. But the work at trying to get survivors is the primary function here, and that is continuing at this time. One of the things we have noted is that there has not been a significant flow of equipment and trucks, mainly down the West Side Highway here, which is one of the main arteries that feeds into the site of where the Twin Towers collapsed. That may be an indication, but also, too, there are literally thousands of people that have been working. It may be that the site is up to capacity. One thing they are also concerned about, weather. We've talked about it before. It's expected to change abruptly after midnight tonight. They've enjoyed good weather for the searches that they have had to do, but it will begin to rain, could rain quite heavily, and the winds are expected to pick up. That is not good news at all, not good for the search effort, not good for all the equipment that is out in the open and that they are now trying to find some sort of shelter for. And then there is the good news, the recovery of 5 firefighters that apparently, we are told, had been entombed inside of their vehicle, which in this case was a Chevy Suburban. For 2 days they were trapped inside there until it was dug out this afternoon. And when the rescuers opened the doors, police tell us that 3 of those firefighters were able to make it out on their own. the chant that went up from the rescuers, USA, USA. It is one brief, bright moment in what otherwise has been a very gloomy picture for those working here at the site of the World Trade Center disaster. Aaron?
Martin, somebody who was in the area at the time said when these guys came out, everyone went crazy. And you knew exactly what he meant when he said it. It is good news. It's been tough to find down there. It has been a very difficult situation to work in. There have been very few successes. And so while 5 may not seem like a great number and put against the number of people who down there who are still missing, it is not. But it is 5 people who are alive today that this morning we didn't know about, and that is terrific news indeed. Judy?
Aaron, it is. I'm sitting here thinking about the families of those 5 who probably had given up hope, had every reason to have given up hope, and now a miracle. At the Pentagon, our Bob Franken, who's been stationed there for the last 3 days, has picked up some information about the black box on that United airplane that went into the Pentagon on Tuesday morning.
The American Airlines plane, Judy, the 757. Of course, always one of the most important things is to try and find that so-called black box. As we know, it's not black box at all. That has been a particularly hard search, but one of the leaders of the search and rescue unit from Arlington County, Virginia, which is the primary police force out here, Captain W. Scott McKay, who attends daily briefings of the people who give complete official situation reports, has told CNN that, in fact, there has been some clues about where the black box is.
We got word that there was some indication that they picked up some signals from the transponder that identifies where the black box is or gives them a starting point to look for it. We haven't actually located the black box. We've gotten it narrowed down, I believe, is what they said. So we're anticipating we're going to find it, but we haven't actually found it.
When did they first hear it?
I understand that they first picked up a signal last night.
And again today?
And again today.
Who told you this?
I got that in a briefing first thing this morning. I can't give you anybody's name right now.
But was it somebody at the Pentagon?
Oh, it was somebody here, yes, at the scene.
But somebody who would know?
Somebody who would know.
So are you searching for it now?
Yes, and that search has been going on since we started. And it will continue until we find it. But we're making dramatic progress in our shoring operations, which allows us to search more and more of the building. So we're hopeful that we'll find it, and as we'll always maintain hope that we find people in there too.
So you've actually heard the pinging from the box?
I haven't, no.
But the reports are?
The reports are that they have heard pinging from the box, yes.
How close do you think they are to the black box?
It's impossible to say. It really is. It's impossible to say how close we are.
Impossible. Yeah. The chaotic condition inside with so much of the area blocked, as we've heard so much. One of the things that has been so important is that they try and shore up some of this. Now, Captain McKay is among those who has been looking not just for casualties, but looking against all odds for some sort of miracle survivor inside. He said he's going to continue to look. In any case, what we have heard now from Pentagon officials is that they are estimating that when you combine the people who were on the American Airlines plane and those who they expect to be found inside, they're estimating that there will be 190 victims, 190 who lost their lives here at the Pentagon when the plane crashed into it. Judy?
All right, Bob Franken standing vigil at the Pentagon. I want to bring you, our viewers, up to date now on where we stand. As we've been telling you, there's new danger and some new hope in the area around the World Trade Center in New York. Authorities saying the American Express building across the street is in danger of collapse. Emergency workers have been pulled back from the building, which is 51 stories high. It was being used as a morgue and a headquarters for triage. Earlier, rescuers thrilled to report that 5 firefighters had been found alive in an SUV that had been buried in the rubble around the World Trade Center. Meantime, across the United States, domestic airlines flying again with limited service and under tight security. The FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, gave the go-ahead for airports to reopen today for the first time since Tuesday's attacks on the Trade Center and the Pentagon. And meantime, in the investigation of the attack, the Justice Department now says that at least 18 hijackers were aboard the 4 planes that were involved in the strike on Tuesday morning. CNN's Justice correspondent Kelly Arena joining us now. Kelly, bring us up to date on what the investigators are focusing on.
Well, Judy, as you said, they have identified 18. This isn't a guesstimate. They do have 18 solid names, information on those people that are believed to be the hijackers. They say there were 5 on 2 planes, 4 on the other 2 planes. It is being deliberated right now as to whether or not they will release those names to the public. If they do, of course, we'll get that to you as quickly as possible. Much of the investigation has focused on aviation schools here in the United States. We are told by justice officials that many of the people that they're looking at, and including several of these 18 identified, were indeed pilots. They had pilot's licenses and they had trained here in the United States. So investigators are really focusing their efforts there to find out not only where those people lived, but their associates. And that really is the key here, Judy. I mean, obviously these 18 are dead, so the key is finding the associates, family, friends, anybody who can lead them to pulling all the pieces together to really figuring out exactly what this organization was, if it was indeed an organization of terrorists, and where they got their financial backing, where their terrorist cells may have been located, how many of those cells there may be that are active and possibly plotting anything more here in the United States. And Judy, I will tell you, the FBI has upped this investigation, which already is the most massive in U.S. history. Yesterday we were told that more than 8,000 FBI personnel were involved. That number has yet increased, and we are told now that 20 offices overseas are directly involved in this investigation. They have also added, obviously, reinforcements from all of the departments of justice. You have INS, you have Customs, you have the DEA and the ATF, everybody adding to this massive man force to find out exactly what happened. Following up on what Bob Franken said, none of the black boxes have been found, and that is something that Justice remains hopeful about, because that could provide a great deal of information moving forward. We are told that while you are hearing signals from the black box at the Pentagon, it is also very likely that they'll be able to recover the black box from the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, since that seems to be, for lack of a better word, the cleanest crime scene that they can deal with. They can really get at the equipment and really go for finding that box. So it is most likely that they may turn that one up first, Judy.
All right, Kelly Arena, our justice correspondent. Kelly talking to justice officials, talking to intelligence officials over these last 3 days. And now we want to skip across town to the State Department, to our correspondent there, Andrea Koppel. Secretary of State Powell today, Andrea, identifying Osama bin Laden as a prime suspect in this, stepping up the language out of the State Department to some extent.
That's absolutely right, Judy. Secretary Powell really becoming the first Bush administration official to publicly single out bin Laden's organization as a prime suspect. In point of fact, the diplomatic message that's being delivered by the folks in this building here at the State Department to countries around the world is uncharacteristically blunt. It really is, are you with us or are you against us? And the one country that's really getting that message hammered home right now is Pakistan, and that's because Pakistan is not only a neighbor of Afghanistan, but it's also a supporter of the Taliban militia, the government in Afghanistan, which the U.S. believes is harboring Osama bin Laden, the man who runs the network known as Al-Qaeda. And as you just alluded to a moment ago, Secretary Powell, for the first time in the last couple of days now, becoming the first administration official to single out bin Laden's organization as a prime suspect in Tuesday's attacks.
We're looking at those terrorist organizations who have the kind of capacity that would have been necessary to conduct the attack that we saw on the 11th. We haven't yet publicly identified the organization we believe was responsible.
They may not have identified the organization, at least publicly so, Judy, but they are getting very close. They say that one of the countries that is responsible for at least supporting bin Laden's network is Pakistan, and that's why they're focusing on the region, on South Asia, and on putting a lot of diplomatic pressure on Pakistan. Just a short time ago, Secretary Powell himself spoke with Pakistan's leader, General Pervez Musharraf. Earlier in the day, Powell's deputy, Richard Armitage, had the the Pakistani ambassador to the United States here to the State Department to deliver a specific list of actions that the United States is telling Pakistan it must take if it is going to be on the right side of things. As everybody knows, the U.S. doesn't have a tremendous amount of leverage with Pakistan. There are a lot of economic sanctions that are already in place, but we're being told, Judy, that the message that's being delivered to Pakistan is that the U.S. could help Pakistan if Pakistan helps the United States by telling the United States where it believes bin Laden is in Afghanistan, where those terrorist training camps are, providing intelligence, things that Pakistan can do as a neighbor of Afghanistan. There are other things that are on this very detailed list, some of which could include things like getting overflight permission from Pakistan for U.S. planes to fly in Pakistani airspace if that should become necessary, or perhaps to provide grounding sites in Pakistan should U.S. troops be needed to go in there if military action against Pakistan is needed. So 2 days into this investigation, into this worldwide investigation, Judy, it appears the United States is really beginning to tighten the noose diplomatically around various countries, but most particular around Pakistan.
All right, Andrea Koppel of the State Department. It will be very interesting to see how the Pakistanis respond. Now to Aaron in New York.
Judy, thank you. The diplomatic wheels turn. I thought it was interesting when Andrea said unusually blunt language. The language of diplomacy is this language of nuance, and so when someone speaks directly, your ears do perk up. We have some new pictures from the blast site area, the ground zero area, whatever phrase you are most comfortable with. We can show you that was shot by one of our producers. We, as you have watched so many of these pictures, and each day now, almost each hour, we've been able to move a little bit closer. This is, you can see, I mean, there is no glass left, is there? I mean, this is just the skeleton of these buildings. And I can't honestly tell you how close to the Trade Center these buildings you're looking at are. I certainly can tell you what that is. You see the rescue teams, the firefighters moving. It looks to me like they were moving back at that point. So I'm going to surmise here that the evacuation order surrounding these two unstable buildings, the American Express building off to the west to the Trade Center, and One Liberty Plaza off to the east, they move people back, and you get a sense of what that evacuation was like, and you take a look at the buildings and the condition that they are in. We saw that flag just a moment ago. I looked off to the east quite a bit, I suspect all the way to Brooklyn, and I could see a flag flying at half-staff, and I suspect that it might have been the federal building over there, but it was a very moving scene for us as we watched it, and as we watch the men and women of these rescue teams trying to go about their business, heartened by the news that they found 5 firefighters alive today, and obviously fighting the depression that comes with...
And that's when it collapsed. Some of the rooms were intact. We were able to climb in through a void, and Lieutenant May, firefighter Kelly, and myself had crawled around through the different rooms, and we were in hotel rooms that were shifted in the stairway. Unfortunately, there was no one in there.
No one at all?
No. The only live person that we got out was the first day when Lieutenant May found somebody was on fire.
When you're finding bodies now, is there anybody else on fire?
Yes. It just, I mean, some people are hurt, but for the most part, we found bodies.
Working on that part of the debris and going through the rubble, can you explain to us how difficult? Can you put in words how difficult?
Oh, it's tremendously difficult. There's just huge amounts of rubble to be moved. and it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. There's tremendous amounts of structural steel. We just think how long it took them to put this building up. It might have come down quick, but just bringing all of that material out is a time-consuming effort. And I'll tell you, the tradespeople that have come and volunteered have done a tremendous job. We'd really like to thank all of them. They've done above and beyond anything we could possibly expect. It's frustrating because you never expect when you come to a fire. When I was coming in, I thought this was going to be a tough high-rise job. Never in my wildest imagination did I think this building was going to come down. I really believed in my heart that we were here to save people, not to carry our brothers out.
So we just had the 3 blasts from the horn. Which building was that in relation to?
I believe it was the hotel across the street, but I'm not positive.
Can you explain just a little bit from a firefighter's perspective what your mission is when those initial crashes happen? Your mission is to go up inside. If most people can't understand.
Well, yeah, we have to go in. There were people jumping, unfortunately, and we have to go in and remove the people as best we can. We risk our lives to save the lives of other people. I never would have imagined a structure of the World Trade Center has been, most of my life, the World Trade Center has been there, and I just could never imagine that coming down. We thought we were going in to save people. We never thought that, I mean, naturally there's always a risk in our job, but we never in our lives thought that 2 towers of the World Trade Center would come down.
They mentioned before that the space is so confined and so small, you cannot put huge amounts of manpower into that. Obviously, full resources of the fire department around the nation, around the country can't just get in there. Is that one of the difficulties?
Well, I think you have a tremendous number of people that want to work, and you have to have, you know, there's only a few people that can actually work in the confined space, and then other people have to, you know, there are many jobs that have to be done. Not all of them are crawling into the spaces, and all of it is vitally important. And again, I'd like to thank the steel workers and all of the trades that have come here and volunteered tremendous amounts of their time, because without them we couldn't do this job.
But obviously there's a great number of people who just want to get in there and start moving rubble, and it's not physically possible.
I'll tell you the truth, everybody comes here with enthusiasm, but everybody's willing to do whatever needs to be done to accomplish our mission.
Where is the main level of power? Can you orient us?
It's hard to say. They're approaching it. It's a 4-sided approach at this point because there's so much rubble. And, you know, everybody's working as hard as they can, and we just want to get our guys out. You know, it's one of those things that there's some great firemen died in here, and the knowledgeable fire officers, tremendous men, and, you know, I really can't describe the sorrow of all this business. It's terrible.
Is there any way you can describe the delicate nature in which the Millennium Hotel is at this stage?
Well, they look at it, they use a survey as transit, and apparently somebody picked up a little bit of a list in the building, but I don't really have too much information on that.
So for our records, you give us your name,
Captain John Sullivan.
This is from
I'm from the Bureau of Fire Prevention. 405 in Washington.
Sorry, this structure right here is part of
405 in Washington.
This structure right here is part of one of the towers. The metal
Which one?
right there.
Yes.
And it fell over. Did that fall over from the beginning, or was that?
Well, yeah. Both towers pancaked. You know, it's the fall one went first, and then the one closest to us fell down. When the closest one to us fell down, I was about, like I said, half a block away helping somebody. We heard the rumble. The whole world turned black for about 10 minutes. I just stopped and you just say a prayer. You didn't know what was going to happen and how you were going to make it out of there. And then once we were able to get around, we removed the injured lieutenant and continued on with the search. Again, like I said, is one of the few people I know that removed somebody alive is Lieutenant May.
Lieutenant May?
Yeah, this is Lieutenant May right here.
Okay, thank you, fellas.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, fellas.
I was a producer of ours talking with that officer. We don't know his name, the firefighter, and we cannot imagine how difficult the work is down there. But as you look at the pictures with us, and we're seeing them for the first time with you, you get a tremendous sense of the devastation. You get a tremendous sense of the work that needs to be done, why this operation is so complicated, why it's going to take so long. Michael Koo has been down in it all day long. Michael, come on, chime in here. Tell me what you're seeing right now. Is there still a lot of concern about these buildings?
Yes, Aaron, there is definitely a lot of concern, and as I look at this, I can imagine why the rescue workers have such concern. I tell you, I've been here all day. My colleagues have been here now for pushing way past 48 hours, and every 3 or so hours or so is a new take on the surrealism of this scene. These are our first shots from this particular vantage point, which is just slightly due north and west of what was, again, the World Trade Center. That's a phrase that I keep using today. You can see the center of this picture here as helicopters fly overhead, the smoldering wreckage from this site. Obviously, that first bit of pile of rubble, which is quite high, is what was the North Tower. And just to the south of that, that would be to your screen right, is what was the South Tower. Both just, again, a heaping pile of rubble that now their rescue workers have carted well over 300,000 tons of out of this area. Just to the left of this, or to the north of what was the North Tower, you can see the skeletal remains, really, of the Vista Hotel, which was, again, it's a building that from this vantage point looks black, slightly shrouded in smoke, and in fact, every so often you can see a new gust of smoke coming up from that. That was a building that was sustained some serious damage back when the World Trade Center was, the bombing of the World Trade Center back in 1993. Now just the skeletal remains of it. Just behind that, I'm not quite sure how cameras can pick it up, but again, shrouded in the smoke is where 5 World Trade Center would be, and that's a building that there's a lot of speculation about what's going on with that, concern that it has sustained a lot of structural damage to that. And I want to just sort of pan a little bit to the right here, or to the west. You can see in what was a street, in the middle of that street, you can see a structure that connects, again, what was the Vista Hotel to the right of our picture, to the west. And that is a bridge that connected much of the traffic from the World Trade Center, from the 2 towers, I should say, over to the World Financial Center. Rescue workers and some structural engineers mentioned to us today that they actually purposely took down that structure because it was so uneven and obviously not firm, and they didn't want to cause any more damage and cause too much more risk to the rescue workers there. And just moments ago, I don't know whether our camera can pick it up now, I don't really see it anymore, but you could see flames sort of shooting out every so often, and they looked like they were flames produced by welding machines. Obviously, they're trying to, one must speculate that what they're doing is they're trying to make this area as comfortable as possible for the rescue workers, and they're trying to parcel out as much of this wreckage and get it out of here so that there's much more room for the workers to maneuver. Just to the right of that, this tall building to the right, which again I mentioned was the World Financial Center, the home of American Express, a beautiful building down here in Lower Manhattan. Some engineers were telling us that this is a building that has some major questions as well. In fact, they went so far as to tell us that they are very concerned. You can see the beautiful glass on it, that some of this glass is not safe, and they may very well have to remove, if you can imagine this, each single one of those windows for fear of having those windows fall on their own and therefore cause even more damage and injury to the people who are working the scene.
Michael, I'm going to interrupt you here, okay? The pictures are extraordinary. The FBI is briefing now in Pennsylvania, and we want to take that.
Right is Dr. Dennis Dirkmaat, professor of anthropology at Mercyhurst College. To my left is Coroner Miller from Somerset County. Something I want to correct right off the bat. There were some discrepancies, and for my part of it, I apologize. There was no military involvement in what happened here. I believe I might have misspoke with concerning potential for a bomb on the plane, and if that was the case, and I apologize for that, but there was no military involvement. I hope that ends that line of questioning and we can move forward with other issues. The other issue that came up this morning that I want to address is there was some concern regarding the locations of Indian Lake, the distance from the scene at the crime scene, and also New Baltimore. Indian Lake is approximately 2.5 miles. The entire lake is approximately 2.5 miles from the crime scene, the actual site of the crime scene. New Baltimore is approximately 8 miles from the crime scene. At the outset of this investigation, the Indian Lake was a part of that crime scene that was staked off by the Pennsylvania State Police. Early this morning, it was discovered that there was some debris in New Baltimore. There was a question at the 10:30 news conference regarding whether it was feasible that debris from a crash at this location could travel 8 miles. After review this morning by both the NTSB and the FBI, they reviewed what was found at the New Baltimore site. They determined that it was all things that would very light materials such as paper, nylon, thin nylon, and things that would, if in the air with a wind, would easily blow. Researching what was going on with the wind and the location at the time of the plane going into the ground, there was a 9-knot wind in a southeasterly direction. Both Indian Lake and New Baltimore are southeast of the crime scene at that 2.5 miles and 8 miles. According to the NTSB, not only is it plausible that debris from this crash could be in both these locations, it is probable that this stuff is debris from the crash that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. There's no evidence has been uncovered as of yet of any other second plane or of anything else being or of a second crash or of any other plane being involved. And as I mentioned earlier, there's absolutely unequivocally, there's no military involvement in the plane going down. We did have an incident earlier today regarding a breach of security that I'd like the Major to address at this time.
Pennsylvania State Police continue our task of maintaining security at this crime scene. Shortly after 2 o'clock, we had 2 members of the media talk to our troopers and request that they take photographs in an area that we would have permitted photographs to be taken. They were told to specifically park in the field, but that under no circumstances were they attempt to cross that field or walk down the dirt road that was there. The trooper began to walk away, looked back. They were headed across the field towards the dirt road. They were immediately arrested, handcuffed, and they were being arraigned at a district justice office. From information that we obtained, we believe there are what you call stringers from New York City. I cannot stress enough, this is a crime scene. Not only is this a crime scene, this right now is a temple burial yard for those victims. We must maintain the integrity of that scene. Thank you.
Briefing by the FBI, the state police in Pennsylvania, the coroner of Somerset County there as well, on the situation surrounding the crash of the plane in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. A quick note, and we'll move along here. The Coast Guard has said that it will reopen New York Harbor to limited commercial traffic today. One small sign, I guess, that normal returns, or at least slowly returns. It is not nearly normal at the New York Armory. Families are gathered there, families of many of the people who are missing still around the Trade Center site. Our Elizabeth Cohen is there, and she joins us now. Elizabeth.
Aaron, what you see behind me is a line of hundreds of people. All of them are missing relatives, and they're standing in line here to give information about their relatives to authorities. Authorities want to know everything about them. They also want dental records in case they need to identify bodies. They also want blood samples from close relatives in case they need to match DNA. I've never seen anything like this here. Families are handing out flyers to the media, hoping for some news on their relatives. Here, for example, Paul Ortiz is missing. He was on the 107th floor of the first tower, 10-month-old baby Rebecca. Darren Bohan was on the 102nd floor. Katie McGarry Nowak, she was a newlywed. She had just shown a wedding video, gathered her friends together to show them a wedding video just the day before. Here we have Joseph Mistrulli. It says, God and angels up above, send us home, the one we love. And I have here with me Vinnie Kamaj, whose father, Rocco, was in the World Trade Center. And can you tell me where he worked and when your family last heard from him?
My father was a window washer on Tower 2, the observation deck. He worked the rig outside. He last called us at 9:15 a.m. from the 105th floor, where he said there was 200 to 300 people just on that floor waiting for them to be told to head down.
And did he say that he was heading down, or did he feel safe?
He said, don't panic, to my mom. He said, don't get upset. Tell my kids I'm going to be okay, not to worry about it. I'm in God's hands. We're all going to be okay, don't worry.
And tell me why today you're distributing these flyers.
This morning, my mom woke me up early telling me that his name was on one of the survivor lists on an internet web page, and that we can get the best information from the building behind us, the armory.
And what happened when you went into the armory here?
I have a case number. I looked it up to see if my dad was in any of these hospitals, and no luck yet.
What's in your head now about what you think happened?
I don't know. I know that my father, he wouldn't have just left everyone behind. He would have looked for his workers. He would have helped people out. He did it on the 90th when they bombed it in '93. He helped a pregnant woman down the stairs.
So he was in the building in '93?
Yes, he was. He's been working there since 1973.
Was he scared to go back and work in that building after the '93 bombing?
My father went back the next day. They asked him, because they needed to inspect the outside of the building, and my father knew how to operate the rig, so he brought down all the workers to inspect the building.
If you think your father might be out there somewhere, what would you want to say to him?
I want to tell him that we all miss him. His little nephew, Luke, misses him. And that we're strong. We got hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, I've been talking to these families for 2 days now, and all of these stories are very much like this. People are just hoping that their relatives are out there somewhere, and they're begging us to talk about them, to show their pictures, hoping that if someone's seen them, that they might be able to identify them and give some information. Aaron?
They were window washers and lawyers and investment bankers and maintenance workers, and they shared very little in their lives, but on Tuesday morning they shared one of the great American tragedies, and now their families look for them and pray for them, and it utterly breaks your heart. Judy?
Aaron, it's very hard to talk after listening to the gentleman Elizabeth was just talking with. It does break your heart. Airplane travel in this country, one of the things we've been very much keeping an eye on. Most of the airlines have resumed flights, but they are running only a limited schedule. They are concentrating first on those flights that were suspended on Tuesday when all of this mayhem first happened. But even with a new activity at some of the airports, like what you're seeing here in Atlanta, there are others that still remain closed at this hour. CNN's Patty Davis has been following the air travel story over the last few days. Patty, bring us up to date on how much travel is now being permitted and what is going on. Patty.
Well, Judy, air travel slowly ramping up at the nation's airports. The airline industry says that, in fact, as of late this afternoon, there were about 1,200 flights in the air. The FAA says that most of those, though, were diverted flights, originally diverted because of the Terrorist Act, as well as airlines repositioning their flights to get them to the airports where they need to be. FAA says that there have been no new flights, but airlines are filing their flight plans for new flights at this time. Now, currently, 67% of the airports have met the FAA's stringent new security standards to reopen. Now, those include the ones that are open now: Dulles Airport, among them Atlanta, Los Angeles, the New York airports, Dallas, Fort Worth. Now, notably still closed, Washington Reagan Airport. That is the airport that's about a mile and a quarter away from where that one plane crashed into the Pentagon. Now, overseas carriers not allowed to fly, and actually you're seeing pictures there right now at Washington's Reagan National Airport this morning. They put 3 massive snow blowers in front of the air traffic control tower. They say that they wanted to prevent terrorist acts there. Those have since been replaced by huge concrete barriers. Now, foreign carriers, as I was saying, overseas carriers are not allowed right now by the FAA into the United States. The FAA, in fact, says that it will turn back any airplanes that are overseas carriers that are coming into the U.S. And one FAA spokesperson said that, in fact, there has been anecdotal evidence that has happened. Judy?
About these security measures that the airlines are now having to institute, how difficult is it, number one, and how long is it going to take?
Well, there certainly are much more stringent security standards in place. Those include no knives that you can bring in. You also have to, you cannot check in at curbside. You can't check in off of the airport, at any off-airport site. Vehicles near the terminal are monitored very carefully. You know, the airlines are telling passengers this is going to be very slow going. One Alaska Airlines official, in fact, said, quote, "If anyone thinks they'll be able to show up 20 minutes before their flight and make it on board, they will be left at the gate." Some airlines saying come as much as 2 hours ahead of time. Now, one of those security measures being talked about today was by Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta. He talked about exploring possibly using the military's elite counterterrorism unit to help patrol the nation's skies.
We are asking for expeditious treatment and action by the Department of Defense to give us some Delta Force folks. They are already trained on high-risk situations, and it wouldn't take that much more training to put the Delta Forces on the airplanes.
The Pentagon says that, in fact, there have been discussions on that, but it's more in the range of training the U.S. Air Marshals with Delta Force type training. Judy?
All right, Patty, which just brings to mind many more people involved in air travel, air security than we've ever seen before in this country. Aaron?
Judy, thank you. We just got a report, and I want to frame this for you very carefully, we have been watching the American Express building, and we are getting a report that there is some collapsing. I don't want to suggest to you here, and I don't want you to hear it this way, that this large skyscraper has collapsed, but we are getting reports that there is some collapsing. What precisely that means, we are looking for clarification now. I don't know how much more serious the situation is down there, but the American Express building is one of 2 buildings in the area of the site that are extremely unstable. Many of those buildings are unstable, but these 2, One Liberty Plaza, I'm going to just turn around here while I talk to you for a second just to see what's going on behind me, that the American Express building is getting some crumbling. Or some collapsing, and we'll keep an eye on that. The building has been a triage center. It's been a morgue as well. Several hours ago, this situation started to deteriorate, and the firefighters in the area, the people who were working in the triage unit and in the morgue were told to get out, and they did. Rescue teams were moved away from the building. It is just another example, again, of how unstable the situation is there, and we will endeavor to figure out exactly what subcollapsing means, how much more serious the situation is at the American Express building about 30 blocks away from us. We have been able to get closer today to the scene, and closer also today to the firefighters and rescue workers who are trying so desperately to find those nearly 5,000 people who remain missing. And we have talked to them, and we have some of what they had to say to us to play for you now.
Well, what we're trying to do now is just, and probably the deputy chiefs will be able to talk to you a little bit more. I'll give you just an overview, but we try to search any kind of surface victims and any kind of voids. There's still a lot of voids underneath the Trade Center. I had just been underneath, and we went down to the PATH train, which is like 2 levels below what you see right up here. And we got to the PATH trains. We investigated some of the areas down there, and then we were called up because they were going to do some debris removal up top.
So when you're talking about the voids underneath, you're literally, what, 2 stories below ground on top of the covered by debris?
Up above, yes, correct.
Can you describe what that must be like?
There was, just a lot of emptiness. That's about it. A little, darkness, empty. There's a couple of fires burning down below, but they're insignificant right now. The main purpose of the mission right now is to get the surface victims or any people trapped in any voids, and that's what we're trying to do. Our firehouse, we're trying to get that in working condition. We had portable generators working. We have the lights back on again, so this way guys can come in, grab some bottles of water, something to drink, and keep everybody going. So everybody's doing a great job.
What happened to your firehouse?
We had all the windows blown out. We have actually, from our house, we have 5 guys missing. So everyone feels like if they can do a little bit of part just to try to get to their guys, that it's an accomplishment today. Even just getting down there and not finding anything was still, at least we felt like we were trying to do something.
Were you the first 2 company?
Well, our company was the first 2 company. I was off.
But your company was the first one here?
Correct.
You must have lost a lot of lives.
We lost, from our company alone, we lost 5. But there are guys that we run in with all the time down here, just missing companies, can't find them, don't know where they are. And that's why everybody's here today.
Tell me, the situation as far as the debris and the removal goes and the danger involved, what thoughts go through your mind when you're working out there?
It's always dangerous. All the guys up here today, I mean, they're all doing dangerous things. It's just part of the job. We understand that. Each one of us know that it could have been us that day. I just happened to be off. Not my change of tours. It seemed to be that it was my lucky day.
Can you explain to us the feeling that you get when you know that as time goes passes that the chances...
Time is of the essence. The quicker we can get to the people, the better chance of survival. The quicker we get to the voids, any type of voids that we might have, and there are plenty of voids underneath the building. So there's still hope. That's why everybody's here digging through the rubble right now.
What about the situation as far as all these buildings around the area? Their structural integrity is damaged.
The buildings department would be able to tell you a little bit more about that. But
what about you, as far as working in this environment?
It's dangerous, but that's what this is the career we've chosen, and this is what we do, and that's why everybody here today. Everybody here today either knows somebody. Everybody here knows somebody that's missing. That's why we're all here.
I hate to ask this, and forgive me for asking this, but does it get to a point, days down the line, weeks down the line, when you just know that there's no more hope?
There's always seems to be hope. I don't know, how long it's been, some of the other collapses that we've had around the country, but there is opportunity still, even as a week goes by, that there's a chance to get somebody. No.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Luke. Thank you very much.
Lieutenant John Radigan down on at Ground Zero. Hope is what we use to get through the worst of times, and this certainly qualifies, and it's going to get a little worse tonight. Rain, heavy rain, high winds expected to move into the area. It will simply make the work harder, more dangerous, and frankly more miserable for the people down there, and there is plenty of misery there already. Judy?
Aaron, Bruce Morton is one of our reporters here in Washington who's covered just about every story I can think of in this capital city for at least the last 30 years. And Bruce has done some thinking today about the impact of these attacks on the American government and the American people.
World War II brought Americans together. Most believed that Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan were evil and aggressive. Americans demanded victory. The phrase of the day was unconditional surrender. Korea and Vietnam, in contrast, divided the country. Vietnam, in particular, left Americans suspicious, leery of wars, and in the conflict since, the motto seems to have been, bomb all you want, but we can't stand American casualties. That seems different now. No yellow ribbons, bring the hostages home, please. Flags this time, half-staff but proud. People are lining up to give blood. The Red Cross 800 number logged 700,000 calls in the first 6 hours after an appeal went out. Some military recruitment officers see an increased interest. And the country seems prepared to send its young people into harm's way.
I think the United States is in a long twilight struggle against these forces of evil that have chosen to destroy us because we are good. And I believe that it may take a lot of time, a lot of American treasure, and perhaps some American blood.
Make no mistake about it, my resolve